Do we really want to be cheesy like that? Or do we just want to do like some chill vibes? Just like, hey guys, my name's Gabby and you're Sam, or Sam and then Gabby, and then start talking. Oh my god. Sobbing.
Remember, I have severe ADHD and I don't take my Adderall on the weekends.
You're listening to Enhance, the podcast dedicated to highlighting real stories told by real people.
Thank you for listening to the Enhance podcast. I'm Sam Brown, your host, and I'm joined today by Gabby, our reoccurring co-host of the podcast. Gabby, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Gabby. I am obviously co-host and assistant producer of the Enhance podcast. Nice to meet all of you. Welcome to our show. Welcome.
We are meeting them.
Well, they're meeting us. We're meeting them. It is a community of love and support, and that's what we want to do.
Yes, we are all here to enhance our healing. That's what it's all about. Gabby and I, to tell you a little bit about us, we met in college. Was it my sophomore year and your freshman year?
Yeah.
And gosh, we were both part of like our film
Oh
club
God.
at college. Yeah, I know. What
Oh my God.
And I'm currently 25 and you're still 24. You'll turn 25 in just a couple of months. Yeah.
Oh wow. I'm
So
old.
we were like every bit, oh my God, we were like 19 and 20 when we met, 18, 19. So we have some roots. We got some roots.
Deep.
But yeah, to tell you a little bit about us, specifically me, I'm 25 years old. I'm a Pisces and I work in film and TV. And I am the host of Enhanced Podcast. Gabby?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, my name is Gabby. I'm 25 as well, or almost 25. 24. Oh my gosh. Guys, I'm getting my numbers already mixed up. This is how it's gonna go. Anyway,
Old
I know.
lady.
I need a cane. Can it at least be bedazzled, with all the little sparkles? That's all I
Yes,
want.
absolutely.
That's all I want.
Some
Glamour.
glitter.
I am a sassy component of this podcast. Bringing some healing as well. And then, yeah, I work in development currently. So for those that don't know what development is, it's a lot of like working for nonprofits to do fundraising and things like that. So I am fully head first diving into that. So that's really fun. And I'm the co-host of the show.
Nice. Gabby, did you know that I did development in my internships in college? I had no idea that's what your job was. Yeah, I did a lot of fundraising, a lot of mainly fundraising. I did like marketing and stuff for like a development office.
Did you ever do
For like 3 years.
did you do the call center at all?
I did. I do. Oh my God, philanthropy
So I'm in
intern. That's what they're
charge
called.
of that at my
Oh
current
wow.
job. Yeah, like so
You
I
know,
am like manager, HR, internal affairs. I mean, let's just go
oh my
off.
goodness. Yeah, before I started working in film on movies, I was the marketing manager at a company, and I ran a sales team, and all they did was cold calls. And let me tell you, that was like death because it wasn't like development. It wasn't where you're trying to raise money for something. It's literally where you're trying to like sell something or buy something off someone for really, really cheap. And needless to say, I did not last in that. And I'm very glad I work in film and
Yeah,
TV now.
no, sales is like a whole nother thing. I think of like my friend's experience just from, a friend of a friend. And she hated it. I mean, she was like, I have to either cold call or go out in the freezing cold and stand in a tent and sell things to people. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I can only do so much. Like, that's a
Oh no.
lot of chaos that I am not ready to
Yeah,
dive into. But
absolutely. We're definitely going to cover workplace trauma in a future episode.
scary.
So, but yeah, so I guess to tell you guys a little bit about how the structure of the podcast is going to go. So I will be your reoccurring host, at least for the first little bit, for the first, like, we'll say like 15 episodes. And Gabby will be reoccurring, but she won't be on every single episode. So I will have a guest host that will come in every few episodes, and then Gabby will be back. But Gabby will be regular for a segment that we call Weird Wednesdays. And Weird Wednesdays is the third Wednesday of every month. And basically, that's just mine and Gabby's time to be weird. I mean, we get to talk about spirituality, things like theories around quantum physics, conspiracy theories, just random shit. that we like to talk about.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a woozy of a Wednesday, but yeah, it's really going to be interesting. I think we have a lot of really cool topics planned. If you are listening to this and you want to give us, some feedback of like what you kind of want to hear, we also really enjoy your opinions and, trying to incorporate that as much as we can, especially with Weird Wednesdays. We have a little bit more like, hey, let's have some fun. Let's talk about
Yeah.
random things that, most people care about, but maybe not. And it's totally fine.
Yeah, it's really just a time to be random. But the rest of the podcast, your new episode every Saturday, will be us diving into real stories told by real people, experiencing real journeys of healing and journeys of based around their passions and talking about the struggles and all that nitty gritty good stuff. So, but I guess to get today started, because we're going to go over, like, just kind of talk about our healing journey and, like, what brought us to where we are. But to get started, Gabby, we have a little icebreaker.
My
Icebreaker.
favorite.
I know, feels like we're back in college, but don't worry, this one's actually cool. So, this is something that a very good friend of mine that may be on the podcast at some point, she taught me like my senior year in college. And it's just one question to a three-part like personality test that you can do when meeting someone new. And so it's just simply answer this question. Gabby, what is your favorite color?
Wow, that is the hardest question anyone has ever asked me in my entire life. My favorite color is primarily blue, but I am a sucker for green and black. But we'll go
Okay,
with blue.
just blue. Well, I mean, we can get into all of them. We can get into all of
Oh,
them.
I mean,
So yeah.
yeah.
So let's talk about how like can you give a very specific like shade of blue? Like what blue specifically do you like?
I do like a not like a navy. It's more of like it's like a middle color. It's like not
Okay, that's very specific.
cerulean.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
really painting
know.
a picture.
I trauma.
That's what it's all about.
I mean, yeah. No, it's like two shades lighter than a navy blue. It's like, still like dark and like a deep blue, but still has like that like light blue like middle part in it. So you don't
Okay,
feel like you're
yes, blue. We're just gonna go
yeah,
blue.
just go with blue.
So how, whenever you think of that very Gabby specific shade of blue, how does that make you feel? Like what are some emotions that come up? What are things that draw you to that color?
Yeah, so I kind of go more with like loyalty. I feel really like strong and like wise when I sit in that
Mm,
color, or like very like just calm and like focused. So,
absolutely.
mhm.
Cool. Okay. Now, same like question for green. Whenever you think of whatever shade of green it is that you are drawn to, what is it that draws you to that? What do you feel whenever you think of that color?
Oh, green's like my fun color. I think it's just like, a little sugar spice, everything nice, just like a very playful energy. Well, it's green because like
Yeah,
you could give all the sass and all the sass in the world and like it just feels right. It feels complete.
understand. Yeah. And then black. Same question. What draws you to black? What do you think of? What do you feel?
Hiding insecurities.
Hiding insecurities. Wow.
Yeah,
So
deep.
definitely some trying to run away from vulnerability. Um,
My main struggle.
so cool. Okay. And I'll tell you what they mean, and then I'll tell you what my answers were when I very first got asked. So basically, your how you answer that question about what your favorite color is and the things that you feel when you think about that color all shows a reflection of how you see yourself. And so when you think of blue, you think of something very courageous, very strong, very stable, very loyal, which means that you would view yourself as someone who is stable and loyal. And so
Hmm.
then also with the green, you would view yourself as someone who's fun, charismatic, adventurous, like likes a journey. But then you also were very drawn to black, which to you made you feel safe and hidden. And so that just means that you are someone who typically presents yourself as very strong, very courageous, very stable, very fun, but you also like to feel hidden and safe. So you may project certain qualities over others so that you can still feel hidden and safe.
As I'm fully wearing a black shirt, like sitting here, like being like, oh my God. Yeah, no, I mean that's actually like so accurate. Like I didn't even think about like it how it reflects myself even. Like I was just kind of like, "Oh, well like when I think of that color, here we are, you know?"
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a cool little twist there. So what were your answers?
So my favorite color at the time, and I would still say is pretty true to me today, was red, and I had two specific shades of red in mind, and it was coral and like a maroon, like crimson maroon, kind of like somewhere in that shade.
Pretty.
And the reason why is because with red, everyone's always like, oh, it's the color of like anger, it's the color of warning, it's the color of caution. Well, yellow is caution, but you know what I mean.
Right,
And
right.
it's like there's studies that show that the color red like can trigger an alarm response within your brain and a stress response within your brain and things like that. But red can also symbolize passion and compassion and love and just all of those things that like also are extreme, but we wouldn't see as necessarily like negative, you know?
Mm.
And so I also felt like red was a very underestimated color that everyone just always kind of shrugged off red. And so then my friend was like, that means that you view yourself as underestimated by other people and that you view yourself as someone who's very compassionate and like like all that stuff. And she was like, and people
Cute.
may think that you're just angry, but you actually feel like you're compassionate. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I just paid for 3 years of therapy, but that's okay.
Oh my god. We went there.
you, you read me for free. Thanks.
It was great.
Oh goodness. But
Like
yeah, well, I guess speaking of therapy, that would be a great segue or segue into uh,
Sigu.
our healing topic, our what brought us here to this point today to start this podcast. So, yeah,
Obviously the start of that is trauma.
yes, tons of trauma.
Amazing. Yeah.
Hmm.
This is kind of like my overall definition of a healing journey. It's a consistent thing. It doesn't stop,
Yeah.
like
Oh no.
you have so many things that are happening to you in your life that are random, out of your own, actions, all of these different things. So, the coping and healing journey never ends. And so you really do have to learn those coping skills and learn how to center yourself, to move on in this healing journey. So,
Absolutely. I would agree 100%. I would also say that like one thing that's important for people to know is that healing and growth, they're correlated. They're synonymous to each other.
100%.
And so, whenever people are like, "Oh, like I just one of the biggest things that people always like would say to me whenever I was younger because as we know, I had a lot of toxic traits and things like that that I had to grow out of from, being young whenever I was young. And people that I really drew in during those toxic phases in my life, whenever I started growing out of them, they were always like, "You changed, you've changed, you've changed." And it was always, well, like, yeah, I grew up, I've grown. But really, the core of it was that I healed. I healed from the things that, brought those toxic traits onto me because sometimes we have things that we're just born with that toxic trait or we're likely to have that toxic trait just from nature, but nurture really plays a big role into it. And whenever you go back and unlearn the nurture that goes into your toxic traits and goes into the things that that have impacted those things, that whenever you act out in certain ways it affects other people, when you unlearn that and take that time to be there with that trauma, with that trait, with whatever, in full acceptance and heal and love and allow yourself to feel what you feel, and then you grow out of it, that it's the same process just from two different angles, you know? And so
Yeah.
I like to look at it as like whenever you plant a tree, I was thinking about this yesterday, and this is going to be like big brain, big thinking,
I'm ready
but
for
if
it.
you look, thank you. So if you look at life as a tree, like your life as a tree, you have a phase in your life toward the beginning where you're still a seed being formed on a mother tree. Like you're still attached to a tree, and eventually the wind just takes you and blows you away. And so for me, like I'm from a very small, conservative, like tiny, like I mean, just closed-minded town in the very middle of Alabama, called Clanton. Shout out to Clanton. Um, but and so that was where my mother tree moment was. Like I
Right.
grew up there. I was still being formed, a seed being thrown, grown from a mother tree. And then whenever I went to college, I moved 3 hours away to Mobile, Alabama, down south. Still kind of conservative, still kind of small, but it is very much a it is a upgrade from Clanton. I will say that there's a lot of progressive
Mm.
things there. There's a lot of things that um, Mobile tries. I'll just put it that way. And yes, it is Mobile because people want to pronounce it mobile, but it's Mobile. But so that's where the wind carried me. You know, the wind carried
Sure.
me 3 hours away, and then I got planted there. And then if you see, like, if you view the rest of it as that's where I breached the dirt. That's where I was put. You know, like I was put there, and then I breached the dirt. And now I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I travel around for work, and because I work on movies, and I got to go where work is. And so while I'm up here, I really saw that as like a moment where the tree has now started to form branches. Like it's breached the earth. It's now out, and these branches are going to go out and touch every single place. Part of me is always going to see Mobile as home because that's where I breached the earth. The part of me is always going to see Clinton as home because that's where my seed, like me as a seed, was formed.
Right.
But these trees have branched out now, and it's taken me everywhere. And that's how your healing and growing journey is. You may not actually move geographically, but you start off as a seed, and then you breach the earth, and then you branch out, and that's what the whole journey is. But it has to be a complete pair between healing and growth. You can't just be like, I want to grow, and I want to grow, and I grow, because you're never going to heal. And then you can't just say, I want to heal, because then you'll never grow. And they have to go hand in hand. If you stay in the same place mentally, physically, whatever, as the space where you were toxic, or you're surrounded by toxic people, or you are constantly reminded of damage done, you're never going to actually fully heal and grow. And yeah, it's a pretty but also ugly and painful process.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that even in my experience, like, it was not fun. And, and it's not fun for a lot of people. A lot of people have different experiences on different levels, and it affects them. Like, for me, I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. So much fun. Still here, smiling. And but my journey, I was born into traditional Middle Eastern family, Catholic Middle Eastern family, and growing up was really different, and like learning the ins and outs of how to fit into this very suburbia world was really interesting to me. And then being called to go 10, 11 hours away to Mobile, Alabama. Like, it's just like, obviously there was something that was learned here that couldn't process, couldn't grow any further. So it was taking myself, giving myself a new experience, doing that 4 years in Mobile and having a good time, learning about myself that I probably would have learned about if I didn't leave Missouri, and then coming back with a new perspective and
Absolutely.
seeing, like, oh, that was kind of messed up that person did. I didn't realize that until now. Maybe,
Yeah,
I could backtrack my steps. And, it's just all about learning about what you could have done better, but also not harping on it. You never want to, like,
absolutely.
sit there and just drain on it, because obviously not healthy. I think we've all done it at some point. But you realize, like, oh, wow, this is a time to step up and figure it out, so you can just move on into your journey, because every day is a new story, every day is a new day. You have every day is a next day to be better. And it's really
Absolutely.
awesome how you can build those blocks up.
Yeah, that's something I have to remind myself a lot, is that whenever, I've had a bad day, because, when you work in film and TV, a lot of people don't realize that you're working like 12 plus hours a day. The current job that I'm in, I'm working in accounting, and thankfully I don't really have to go over the 12 hours too much, but it's still 12 plus hours every day, Monday through Friday. That's 60 plus hours a week, and you just have your weekends, but then most of the time on your weekends, you're wanting to relax, and you don't really have a life outside of that. And so whenever it feels like an endless process sometimes,
Right.
like I'm definitely following my dreams. I'm happy. I love the opportunities I've had. I'm literally working on a movie right now for Universal Pictures. And like, that's an amazing opportunity. Somebody from, like, a guy from Clanton, Alabama, now getting to work on like a huge studio film. That's amazing, and I've been very lucky with all my opportunities. So don't get me wrong, but being someone that is in that constant cycle of working, looking for the next project, looking for things like that, it's very easy to get bogged down. And
Right.
it's very easy to, when you have a bad day or a bad few days or a bad week, to get trapped in that and forget that tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow I will wake up and it's a whole new day with new opportunities, and I don't have to carry this stress with me into the next day. And I've gotten good at getting in the habit of each day, whenever I've had a bad day, reminding myself, like, tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow's a new day. I don't have to carry this into tomorrow, you know?
Right.
But it took a long time, you know, like it took a very long time for me to finally get to the point where now it's habitual. Now I know, like, if I'm stressed out in that moment, I'm like, it's all good. Be stressed today. Be upset today. Be cranky today. Be irritable today. But tomorrow's a new day. And don't make it anybody else's problem. You know,
Right.
like,
Right.
don't shove your stress or your irritation or your irritability on someone else, but just feel it, be there with it, accept it, and tomorrow's a new day, you know? And it's definitely made life a lot easier to handle, and the stresses of life a lot easier to handle whenever I'm not trying to shove it away, and
Right.
when I accept it, but then also accept, like, tomorrow's a new day, you know?
Yeah, and I'm kind of excited to see, with our, different guest hosts and things like that, or different topics that we decide to talk about throughout this podcast, of finding that switch of going from, wow, this is a crappy day. I can't even move on from it. And you go on days without it, to the switch of like, wait, I'm healing. I'm figuring
Mm-hmm.
out my life. I'm living it day by day, but also like seeing big pictures and stuff. And I know that tomorrow is a new day. And just watching that switch in people is very interesting, because you
Oh
never
yeah.
know when it's coming, because it's such an individual journey that, you know, it's just like, from even like a, out person view. So like if I'm looking at you, Sam, like I sit there and I go, wow, there was an immediate switch at this point at this time, and I saw it,
Mm-hmm.
but there was no
Yeah.
way for me to calculate, oh yeah, Sam's in June of this year, like
Yeah.
there's no like timing to it. It's all a personal journey. It's all about that personal growth, that healing, that coping. And I think that's what this podcast is really going to bring out in people, and show that it is possible for people that may still be struggling, or people that have already gone through the healing journey and they're like, yeah, I resonate with that. I
Yeah.
totally understand, the whole process that you just spoke about.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. I think that that's the cool thing too, is that you brought up, was that there are moments where, like, even now, whenever I'm in a situation, I handle something so much better than what I would have a year ago, even a week ago, you know?
Oh
And
yeah.
looking back, I'm like, whoa, when did that happen? Like, when did I become this person capable of handling this easy, you know? And like, it's a nice, I don't know, it's just a nice feeling. And then sometimes, you know, you even handle it so well that it no longer becomes a struggle anymore. It's
Right.
just like, when it pops up, you easily just like, I know how to handle this, and you do it, you know? And I
Yeah.
think that's really the beautiful part of it, because like I said, like, healing, people think that it's like, oh, it's like beautiful, and like the universe enlightens you and
It
comes
is
down and you just,
traumatic. You will get
yes.
run over. You're going to have some stretch marks, some bruises,
Yeah,
some gashes. Like, it is not pretty at all. But I mean,
absolutely.
by all means, I'll say this right now. First episode, let's get into it. I'm not perfect. Sam's not perfect. We struggle.
What?
Are you seriously shocked? I mean, I knew imperfect, but no. Like, but honestly, like, like we go through our own struggles, and like, we may be talking about a topic that we feel like we've really, really got hands on, and a lot of healing there and stuff. But then there's another topic that we have no healing, no knowledge, no nothing. And like, cuz you're never perfectly healed, because like I said before, healing is a complete, constant journey.
Oh yeah.
So don't ever, assume that we have any actual like, oh yeah, we're perfect. Absolutely not. I am the worst ever. So
Oh my goodness.
no, I mean, but it's true though, because like there are gonna be topics where I'm like, yeah, like I learned how to cope with that. And then there's gonna be other topics where I'm like, yeah, I'm still figuring that one out. Actually,
Hmm.
like here's an update. Like, because seriously, it's a journey that just never ends. So just don't ever,
Absolutely.
assume that of us. We definitely don't want to
Yeah.
give that off either. Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
but
I definitely think that an important part of a healing journey too, though, like, just to take into account, is that sometimes it's okay to admit that, you know, we see it as like weakness whenever we admit, like, oh well, I'm healing from this, or oh, this is still a trigger for me, or
oh yeah.
things like that. But it's not. It's normal. It is absolutely normal. And when you hone that and you accept that that is something that sorry, my cat. For those of you that can't see, my cat has now decided to hop up. I have two cats. They are brothers and they are sweet little boys. But one of them just hopped up and started rubbing his face on my shoulder,
So
like,
sweet.
please pay me attention.
I literally was about to start laughing so hard, and I was like, "Oh
Yes.
no."
Sorry, I was gonna try and power through, and but you know what? At some points, you guys are going to hear about my cats or hear them at some point. So I might as well get it out of the way in the first episode.
Start
But
it up.
anyways, so people see it as something weak whenever you admit that you've had a downfall, or when you admit that you're healing from something, or that something's a trigger, or something's an insecurity. But it is normal, and when you own that and you accept it and you take responsibility for it, one, to be honest, a complete power move is no one else can hold it against you.
Right.
No one else can use it as a weapon against you. And that was a big lesson I had to learn, was that I'm a very sensitive human and I'm very empathetic. I'm very emotional. I'm still very logical. I normally make decisions based off of logic, but boy, oh boy, do I feel my feelings fully, you know?
Yeah.
And a big lesson for me to learn was that when people do something that hurts my feelings, or they do something that just really hits me to my core, and I get upset about it, and I try to have a civil conversation with them, and they say, oh, well, you're just so sensitive. They can no longer use that as a weapon against me because I already knew that. I knew that going into this conversation. You're not telling me anything new.
It's like,
And that was
thank you.
honestly,
Thank you
yeah,
for
exactly.
telling me.
Wow, I had no clue.
I'm
But
I'm
you know,
emotional? Shocker.
whoa.
Like, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was something that, like, being able to be like, I know, but that's not the point of our conversation. Why are you bringing that up? You know, okay, thanks for checking in and letting me know. Thanks for the reminder. But back to the point, like,
Right,
that's
exactly.
beside the point. So, but yeah, that was a really nice moment. Was the like realizing that, like, people really can't hold anything against you if you already know it about yourself, and if you already go into a conversation taking that into account. Because if you go into a conversation taking that into an account, like, if I'm feeling upset about something that someone said or did, I already know that I'm a very sensitive human, so I'm already rationalizing it and working through it on my own. Like, I'm already going, okay, they more than likely did not mean it the way it came across, or they more than likely are just having a bad day and it's nothing personal. Take some time to think about that and understand that they are experiencing something outside of you, and see how you feel about it in a few hours,
Yeah.
or even a few days, a few weeks. And if you do that, then that really, it shrinks the emotion, because one, you're giving yourself permission to feel. Two, you're making it not about you. And so whenever you go to that person, your confrontation is going to be a lot calmer, a lot more civilized, a lot kinder. And then their reaction is to all their reaction. But one thing they can't hold against you is that you're a sensitive human being, because you already knew that. You already took that into account when you plan to go to them and talk to them about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all about how you approach people too, because sometimes, like, during your healing journey, we kind of talked about this a little bit ago, but you know, don't put it on other people. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand how to kind of remove, your feelings from it a little bit, just so you can get through the conversation and have that, very productive, like, I want to fix this, conversation. And I think that's where a lot of people don't succeed.
Yeah.
Honestly, because sometimes, and people don't like confrontation. People don't like being in trouble. And it's not the fact that of being in trouble. It's more of feeling that you were wrong, or you're being called out for something, or etc., etc. It's not, and people take it differently, but in my experience, I feel like that's always the hardest part of the healing journey, is dealing with that conversation piece. um and also, like, making sure you're going through your feelings after that conversation, because, like, they might say something that hurts your feelings, and if it hurts your feelings, like, 100% valid, but process on your own, figure it out, talk about it to yourself, or if you have a trusted friend or a therapist or someone you really want to discuss that with, speak about it with them, get that through. Because in the end of the day, why hold that against you? But it was a
Yeah.
conversation, it is a part of your journey, and if it does hurt your feelings, you're allowed to feel those feelings.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought up therapy again, because that's something too that I realized as an adult, was that, like, not everyone sees therapy as a normal thing. And that blew my mind when I found out. I actually just found that out earlier this year. So I have been in therapy. I'm not in therapy now, but, like, if I wanted to be, I would. Like,
Right.
I was in therapy for probably about 6 years off and on, and more on than off. And, it was a long journey. I went through 4 different therapists, and there were different points where I was like, this therapist is really great for me. And then I had exceeded what that therapist really specialized in or the scope of what they saw. So I moved on to a different therapist. And so it's a constant journey of that, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it just depends on where you're at. I had a therapist that she liked to just kind of chit chat. I'd go in, I'd talk about something that was frustrating in me, and it was more of like a rant session. And that was cool. And that was fine for the time. And then I had another therapist that she really wanted to get down to the, like, I mean, the nitty gritty. Like, she wanted to get into why do you behave the way you behave, and let's change that. And that was honestly one of the biggest, I guess, growing points, healing points for
Sure.
me, was learning how to be in control of my actions, learning how to be in control of my behavior. Really cool. She was a personality specialist or personality disorder specialist or something like that. And so she said that what's so interesting is that a lot of people, when they are young, so like when they're still in young adult years, teenage years, they will show symptoms similar to borderline personality disorder.
Interesting.
And that she said that there's a lot of people that, like, you really, like, most of the time you don't actually get diagnosed with borderline personality disorder until you're about 25 years old, because when you're young, like, you show a lot of those symptoms just as an, like, someone who's developing, as a developing human. And so she had a lot of patients that had borderline personality disorder, and so she used a lot of those same coping skills with me. And then I was like, well, am I just different? Am I weird? Like, I know you're saying it's common, but, like, I haven't met anyone else that, like, has these same behavioral or anger issues that I have. And so she ended up doing, because of the fact that that question was raised, she ended up having a support group, and not even really support group, that's not the right word, group therapy, that's a better word,
Okay.
of people that were my age, college students just like me, that did not have borderline personality disorder, but had a lot of the same symptoms that I did, that were struggling with, like, controlling their behavior, controlling their emotions, falling into the same cycles, and so on and so forth. And that was pinnacle for me. Like, that was honestly such a crucial point in my healing and my growing. And so then after that, I had another therapist that she really just liked to chit chat. She liked the tough love kind of approach, and sometimes that was great, and sometimes it wasn't. And then
Right.
finally had another therapist, that my final therapist, and the one that I will probably go back to and see for the rest of my life. She is all about, she changes up her kind of how she's viewing things depending on what you're going through, but she really specializes in getting to the core of the issue. And honestly, that healing process, like that whole, like, therapy process for me over the past 6 to 7 years, has been amazing. Like, it's been exactly what I needed each time. And so that was something that, like I said, I realized earlier this year that not everyone sees that as normal. But I would really like to change that. I think that people should know that talking to someone, talking to a therapist, someone who has, has a psychology background,
Right.
should, like, talking to someone like that is fine. So talking to someone like that is normal. It's encouraged. It's okay. It doesn't make
Oh,
me any less of a
100%.
human being. If anything, it's made me more of a functioning and, like, actual member of society, like, human being, that I couldn't have been without therapy. And I realized this because earlier this year, my mom got very, very sick. She had COVID, and my mom has been sick for a while. She just has a lot of disabilities and disorders and things like that that just came with age. She had me later in life. And so, but she got COVID toward the end of last year and got really bad, and I mean was out for probably like a month and a half. And she ended up getting hospitalized, and I had to drive up to Clanton from Mobile because I was still in Mobile at that point. And while I was up there, like, I really had to I had to put on my big boy pants, because my brother, who is the oldest of us, I have a very weird family structure. Actually, going to talk about that in the next episode.
Amazing.
But basically, to sum it up just right now, I don't have any full siblings. I only have half siblings and adopted siblings. So I grew up with two siblings, like, primarily, and then my mom adopted while I was older. But my oldest brother, who is my half brother, his dad had just passed. So the fact that our shared mom, was in the hospital going through all of this, like, he was not able to be fully attentive, and he
Right.
was not able to really take on that older brother role, because he was the youngest of his dad's, or no, the second youngest of his dad's kids, but yet he was having to act like the oldest there. So he was having to pick up the slack there. So I had to pick up the slack for my mom. And so, I mean, there was a whole lot of stuff that happened, but we all know how Alabama's healthcare is. It's pretty shitty. And so I just really had to advocate for my mom. And so with that, like, I was just talking to my brother and I brought up therapy and was like, I'm gonna have to go. Like, I need to book a appointment with my therapist because like this has just been really stressful. And he said, and like, no shame on him whatsoever because this is just how it is, like where we grew up.
Right.
But he said that's one thing that I've never been able to bring myself to do is therapy. And I was like, why? And he was like, I'm too prideful. I can't bring myself to it. And I like that really shocked me. That shocked me, because I was like, how is it going to therapy and getting like that's healthcare?
Right.
That is just as crucial as physical healthcare. Like there are tons of studies that show that your healing, even if for a physical ailment, is very much dependent on your mindset, on your mentality. Like there's how I don't understand how that is a struggle between pride and humbleness. Like how is that? There's no, that should not even factor in.
And
You know?
with me, I went through therapy more like end of middle school, high school era, traumatizing, honestly. I didn't have the best experience at therapy. There was a lot of like things that should not have been happening that weren't ethical, you know.
Yeah.
But then that also hits with like, oh my god, there's this borderline of like, especially at the end of high school, like, oh, is she an adult or is she still a minor? Is parents can be involved, can they not? And it
Mm-hmm.
for me it wasn't a great tool. But then, I when I went to college, I was a psych major. I learned
Yeah.
all the ins and outs, what is supposed to happen, what is not supposed to happen, what is a, good session supposed to look like. And, I think some of that stubbornness, if with people not wanting to come in, is wanting to be vulnerable with a
Mm-hmm.
stranger.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes down to. And, for me, I've utilized a lot of like online tools, so like different like therapy apps and things like that, to help my individual journey, which has been a lot more helpful. But yeah, it is not that traditional face to face discussion. It's very much like a texting type of thing for me. Like, hey, I'm having this hard time. What do you think? And then I get asked
Yeah.
questions, and that's how it goes. And then also with like my background, I used to work on a crisis line,
Mm-hmm.
and that experience was interesting because a lot of our a lot of the patients at the time would only come when something really bad happened. So they
Mm-hmm.
could have avoided most of that from the buildup,
Yeah.
but decided not to because it just wasn't part of their journey. They didn't think
Yeah.
they needed it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think, again, like it comes down is everybody goes through this healing journey. They have to figure it out. It's a very individual thing. So if you think therapy is going to be, the thing for you, it can be the thing for you. It could be the thing that really just gets you going in the morning and, have a positive outlook on life. And for some other people, it might not be, because
Yeah.
it depends on vulnerable you want to be with that person depending on what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I will say every good therapist I've had has said that therapists are one of the only jobs where you are working yourself out of clientele. Because a lot of people think that like whenever you go to therapy, it's like, oh well, I had something I've got to plan forever and something I got to do. Like no, your therapist will work with you and will see you on what works for you. But also your therapist is looking at the situation, hopefully, as
Right.
with the goal of you not having to come to therapy forever.
And that's a
They
hundred
are
percent
wanting,
right. 100%.
absolutely, and they are wanting to teach you how to therapy yourself. And like, and I know that's probably not correct, like English
Therapy
whatsoever,
yourself. We're gonna
but,
therapy
but
yourself.
yes, and I have learned how to therapize. I don't know, but like,
I mean, the basic thing of what you're saying is creating coping skills to help you develop some kind of self help until it
yeah,
gets worse. Then,
oh,
if you need to
oh,
step back in, well, no, because think about it. Because,
we
like I
went two
said, this
different
is
directions.
okay. Well, it's mostly coping skills to help you on your journey. So if
Yeah,
something does get worse, I mean, you're always invited back to come to that therapy start, back
yeah,
to square one type of deal. But that doesn't mean you need to do that. It
hmm,
might be that you go to therapy, you do a 10-week kind of deal, and you're like, wow, I figured my life out. Great.
yeah,
And that's all.
absolutely.
Or,
And that was something, yeah,
yeah. Or it's the vice versa, where it's like, oh, I did 10 weeks and I learned these coping skills, but then something really traumatic happened, so now I need help
Hmm.
again. And that's totally
Yeah,
fine. Both journeys are acceptable.
that's exactly. Well, I've started going to therapy whenever, and it's become a normal thing where if I'm in a situation where I cannot figure out how to move past it on my own, I'll
Mm-hmm.
give myself time to try and figure it out. Like I will absolutely give myself time to sit and look at the different scenarios, walk through all the things I've learned up to this point in therapy. But if I get stuck and I don't know what to do from that point, that's when I go back to therapy.
Yeah.
And I was actually in a situation very recently where I was like, do I need to go back to therapy? But then I had a breakthrough and I figured it out on my own and I got to the root of something and I'm still like getting to the root of something and I felt 1,000 times better, still feel 1,000 times better. And
Sure.
so, like that's the point in therapy is it's like to give you the skills because there's no handbook on how to do life. There is no handbook on how to
If
do
there
life.
is, can you please send us a copy via our
I don't
social
trust it.
media?
Like, I don't trust it.
if
Don't
there
send it to
is,
me.
if there is, I would love to take a look at that. It's probably not real. But,
Yeah,
and you're
no.
right. There's no handbook. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
it doesn't say, okay, after college, you get job within 2 weeks.
no.
You then go through
But
this really sad period and then you're going to fix yourself. Like,
no.
no.
But people pretend that's how it is. Like you go to
I
college and
wish.
you get a job and you get an internship on college and then that internship brings you on full time and blah 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 blah. And like no, that is not how it happens. That is not everyone's journey. As you know, Gabby, I went to college and I graduated from college. I know,
Wow.
shocker.
Incredible.
And I will tell you, I am one of the first people to tell you that college is overrated and that you don't need college to be a successful human being. I work in film and TV, and I acquired. I mean, like the college we went to was expensive. It was a private Jesuit Catholic liberal arts college, and I mean, I have probably about $50,000 in student loans. I'll drop them out. $50,000 left over in student loans, and that's like the same amount that some people that get like medical degrees like or
Dude,
like or
yeah.
pre-med have whenever they finish their pre-med program. But and so I accrued that debt, which one good thing that's come out of COVID is that it is still in deferment, zero interest deferment. But
Yeah.
um but the thing is I meet so many people in my field that have zero college experience. And that's like my boss right now. She has like she's got a bachelor's and a master's in accounting, and she is working for people that don't even have half of that. Like our
Yeah.
bosses have just been in the film industry working in accounting for they say like 30 something years,
Because they already
and
know how to
like
do it. It's a
exactly.
skill.
And so that's the thing is like you do not need college. College is cool. It was good for me. I don't regret going because it was good for me for my personal development. It was good for me to see the world outside of Clanton, Alabama, and to see the world in a bigger way. And Mobile was a really good stepping stone because it is a city. It's not a very big city, but it is a city, and it's a lot bigger than Clanton, Alabama. So it was good for me to
Right.
get to see that. And so I don't regret it. But if you're struggling right now because you don't know if you want to go to college or you don't know what you want to do with your life, like don't rush. You do not have to choose to go to college right now as a default. You don't. You can
Yeah.
go find a decent job that will help you figure out what you want to do and save money. Like you do not waste your time on college, like on going to college if you don't know if that's what you want. So
Sure.
that was a tangent, but I feel like it was needed.
Oopsies. It's okay. No, and I mean, and that's completely true because that kind of sticks with our theme of like creating your own journey, creating your own
Hmm.
healing, creating your own growth. We're trying to get across the point that you don't have to do the building blocks that people tell you that you need to do. If
Yeah,
you want to get a job and, go straight out of that into high school, go do it. No one's going to
yeah,
stop you. The only person that's going to stop you is yourself of self-doubt.
yeah,
Period.
absolutely.
On God.
Like
Like,
you are the captain of your journey.
yeah, and and it's part of the healing process. Maybe you
Yeah,
figure out that was a mistake, or maybe
yeah,
you figure out that, oh, that really worked for you, and you go on your way and you figure it out, because life is to learn about yourself and what you can do to not only make yourself better but the world better. And it's all this
yeah.
just process of love and respect and enhancing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, we touched on a lot of cool things. And I think one thing I would like to say is that, Gabby mentioned that she worked for a crisis hotline. at one point, and so we will actually be getting into that in detail, like in very like, I mean, getting into the nitty gritty, as I like to say, of
So
that job
excited. So,
in a future
so
episode.
excited.
So if you have questions or there's some things that you would like for her to talk about, please, by all means, reach out to us on social media, comment, whatever. Like, this is going to be on YouTube, on Spotify, maybe on Apple Podcasts. Don't quite know yet. And if you have any questions in general or just want to reach out, feel free to follow us on social media, reach out. You can see my lovely cats on my Instagram. You can find me on Instagram and on TikTok at Sammed If You Do. That's at Sammed If You Do, SAMMED. If you do, all lowercase, no spaces, no like funky characters or anything like that. Just straight up lowercase letters. And then you can find the Enhanced Podcast on YouTube and on Spotify. It's just Enhanced Podcast. And our logo is this nice E with a little swirly
It's
around
so
it. And it's got all
pretty.
kinds of fun colors with it. It is. I made it myself.
Oopsies.
And Gabby, Gabby, you want to tell them how to find you on various social media?
Yeah, so I'm on TikTok if anybody wants to follow me on the TikTok. And that's just Gabby S80, like the number 80. Or you can check me out on my Instagram. And that's gonna be GSABAT123. Super easy.
Nice.
Mhm.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Thank you for listening to our very first episode of Enhance. And we hope to have you back next week. And we hope to hear from you on social media.
Oh, so exciting. Enhance your peace
Your joy.
and your existence.